Public Service and Administration Minister Senzo Mchunu has revealed that nearly 5,000 government employees have taken early retirement. This is from the start of the COVID-19 pandemic until last month. Mchunu also revealed that there are a number of vacant posts for directors general and heads of departments in national and provincial governments. Well, the minister joins me now. Good evening, Minister Mchunu, and thank you so much for your time. Of course, while you're dealing with all of these vacancies that have been created, you were hoping that at least 30,000 public servants would take this early retirement. That figure has fallen far short of your target. What does that mean for you going forward?
Now, firstly, let me just say that that was just an estimate, a rough estimate that was made before we arrived at public service. And when we arrived, the unions had already indicated their rejection of those projections and of that plan. And it was to be active until September of that year, and it fell off after the end of September 2019. We no longer were working on the basis of that estimation. But if you ask me what is ideal in terms of retirements, government does have provision for public servants who want to retire early. They are always free to come and apply for early retirement. They will. We are not going to be making an announcement that people must retire early or what. It depends entirely on them. But if they do, what happens is that you have to anticipate it. You have to plan so that you know exactly what to do in terms of replacing that experience. Those individuals physically, but also have to, of course, those who may be new entrants, then replacing those, they replace them from below, and then those who can take over at a higher level do so. So it's not something that means that when people retire, that wouldn't be the plan. You don't replace them because that will kill public service just in terms of headcount alone. So it's something that is there. Public servants can opt for it as and when, and they are legally entitled to that. But these are the implications, as I said.
You're currently on a collision course with workers in the public sector, and it's over the salaries or wage agreements. Now, in your briefing earlier today, you said that the government is committed to collective bargaining and won't undermine it. Doesn't that fly in the face of what you've done over the past year in terms of reneging on the 2018 agreement?
Look, let me make an example. There are many people, not only in South Africa, elsewhere, who would owe somebody something, and for one reason or the other, you are unable to make payment on the due date or altogether for one reason or the other. Now, if you get disabled in one reason or the other for not fulfilling that, it can't correctly be said you don't honor agreements. Let me leave that. We don't take that argument. All we're saying, but we leave individuals to express themselves and raise their opinions. But what we know is that according to Treasury in South Africa, as they said to us in October, November in 2019, that the state does not have money. Now, this in a meeting, a physical meeting, led from Treasury by a minister and from DPSA myself, to say how is there no money, and how do we ratify the situation? And the situation is that, and then the answer was, Mr. Mchunu, there is no money in the state. We are precarious, we are on the cliff. following a number of things that have happened. And therefore, working on those bases, we've been consistent saying, even though we are told, by the way, people should know that all the money for all departments come from Treasury. So salaries for public servants doesn't come from DPSA.
So then, Mr. Mchunu, what is the point of the current negotiation if government is so adamant on its position around not having money? Shouldn't you just stick to the announcement that you've made? Because ultimately you've entered into these negotiations. You're giving a sense to the unions that there might be some kind of agreement or consensus reached about salary increases going forward, when in fact, if I'm hearing you correctly, it's a process that's going to lead to nothing.
Not at all. Not at all. Negotiations are a very important session between government and public servants via public sector unions. It's about identifying challenges, wherever they come from, whether they come from the public, whether they come from public servants themselves, or from government, or from public service itself, which is a contract between government and the people of South Africa. When there are such problems, we've got to meet and find solutions to our problems. Now, there are all points. It's very important that we keep in the chamber identifying problems, and once they have been identified, we then find solutions to resolve them.
Mr. Mchunu, one of the biggest problems that you're facing now where this issue is concerned is that public servants have threatened to down tools across the board, and we've seen it happening in some provinces where we've seen health workers go on strike over shifts, and that in itself being an indication of how far public servants are willing to go despite the global pandemic that we're in order to ensure that they feel that they're not completely undermined by the negotiations process that government enters into. So how are you going to deal with that problem? What are you going to say to public workers to try and ensure that services in this country are not brought to a standstill?
Look, people, including unions and public servants, also in a democracy, they can make statements like the ones that you're talking about, threatening strikes and so on. But what we have to do on our side is to frankly focus on finding solutions. Whether it's finding solutions where money that we don't have is raised as an issue by public servants, as it is the case now, we have to look at that and find solutions. When they talk about, because for instance, there are 16 demands, if I could use that language, that organized labor is putting to government, we have to sit. We don't have an alternative. Even if we were to run away or put our heads around we will have to come back and say, this is what is being put on the table. What is the solution or possible solution on this and this? It doesn't mean that we would expect that whatever we say will be 100% received by public servants or unions in the public space. It also doesn't mean that what they are saying is something that will be received by government 100%. But what it means is that you will have issues lined up for engagement. And that is what we are committing to genuinely on behalf of government. And we are saying whatever we do, we must exercise leadership. We must ensure that we consider things in balance, because government doesn't have just one responsibility, that of paying salaries only. There are other responsibilities.
All right.
These are difficult matters and very emotional matters, and understandably so. But we must find solutions, no matter how difficult it is, with labor sitting in the chamber. That is what it needs to be done.
Public Service and Administration Minister Senzo Mchunu, let's leave it there for tonight. Thank you so much for your time.